Welcome to the Earth Day celebration 2023. And we're really pleased that you could join us, and hopefully other people will join in the next few minutes because it's an exciting program. At NOSM University, we are practicing reconciliation. And on this day in particular, and tomorrow as well, I hope that your practice will involve thinking about wherever you are in this great Northern Ontario environment. As I said, I'm on the lands of Atikameksheng and Wanapitei First Nations, and our campus in Thunder Bay is on the lands of Fort William First Nations. But I know many of you are joining us from all over Northern Ontario. And I talk about reconciliation and practice, respect and trust, because as I said today, and especially tomorrow, Earth Day. Earth Day is tomorrow, and today we're going to spend the next hour thinking and reflecting on what our role is in keeping the earth healthy and keeping ourselves healthy. I always feel like, these events like Remembrance Day and specific holidays should not be just left to one day. They should be practices that we should think about all the time. And as we embark on our journey as university to really truly make a commitment to planetary health, we have a great opportunity to be able to focus on this for at least 1 hour. And so give us your time. Text your friends and tell them to join us right now. I'd like to see many, many more people joining us for this annual event. So I do acknowledge the fact that we are guests here on this part of the earth, and that there are many issues that impact on healthcare in our society. And through climate change and the impact of planetary health, we'll have a chance to really have the dialogue today. We have a couple of short videos. Dr. Elaine Blacklock is the chair of our Committee on Action Change, and I'll speak about her in a minute, as well as Sam Hunter. But as part of this is that they will speak to what we're doing at the university. And of course, we're delighted that Sam Hunter could be here to speak about what he's doing. So Sam was born at Holly Lake, located on the southern shore of Hudson Bay, currently lives in the remote Cree community of Pianowook, Ontario, in the middle of Polar Bear Provincial Park. I just love speaking about all of these because it really does bring home part of where we are in Northern Ontario. Sam has had a very interesting background, and now he's building an energy efficient home, harnessing the energy from sun, wind, and water. And his concept of green economy is really remarkable. He has some great stories to tell us about lives he has changed and things that he's doing as a mentoring adult. The other person who will be speaking today is Dr. Elaine Blacklock. Dr. Elaine Blacklock is, of course, a very significant champion and pediatrician who is a role model for me. Elaine, it's great to meet you and have a chance to learn from you. I have learned so much just in the year that, as you say, you're a chronically retiring pediatrician, but you've been in Sudbury for much longer than I have. And in the last 7 years, you've done so much lobbying and writing, including helping us at NOSM University to clarify what our role is and what our strategic actions will be. Mostly you've been teaching in the undergraduate medical education program, as well as you say, anyone else who will listen, about the health implications of climate change and the culpability of the healthcare systems. You've already had an immense impact. And so I'm really glad that Elaine has taken on the leadership of our Action Committee on Climate Change and will be able to, help guide us, because we are struggling. We're not doing a great job, and we have a long way to go. But one thing we did do was we did sign the Academic Health Institutions Declaration on Planetary Health. And for some people who were at the International Congress on Academic Medicine in Quebec City, the academic health institutions declared the health of the planet a code red emergency and made a call for the immediate implementation of planetary health education and research that transition to a climate resilient and low carbon health system in order to build a healthy, sustainable, and just future for all. I was excited to see this, and there were some fantastic plenaries at this event. There are 7 action items which I will be asking NOSM University to report to me on what our progress will be. And that declaration, as you'll see, but don't go to the next slide yet, Rebecca, is that we will be committing to number 1. We have taken the Planetary Health Pledge. We would like to align to the Planetary Health Education Framework. Much of this was covered in my blog this month, and endorse the Fossil Fuel Non-Proliferation Treaty. We will commit to a climate resilient net zero emissions healthcare system by 2040. We will provide healthcare professionals and learners with value and evidence-based training to reduce overdiagnosis and unnecessary investigations and treatment. Just pause there, Rebecca, because I want to point to people, the reality of the public health emergency in the pandemic was not only that it was an endemic, it was also a massive use of plastic and disposable items, which were not planetary helpful, and we need to think carefully about how we go forward with that. The next slide, please, Rebecca. So the other ways we can take action, number 4, through research, policy, and advocacy, through reducing emissions by associated with travel, and I hope Elaine's going to speak to our travel pledge, which is very important, especially at NOSM University, where we have a lot of travel across our 2 big campuses and our numerous other community-based training opportunities. We must become an anchor institution of sustainability through the integration of transport networks, local agriculture, zero carbon energy production, and circular economy practices. And we must collaborate with other disciplines to desalinize our efforts, leading in research, policy, and advocacy. And as you can see, signatories to this were not all 17 medical schools, I gather, but certainly most of them. And we're hoping that, of course, as NOSM University, we will lead in this space. So that's the big announcement. We signed on and we're committed to it, and it will take some time. So be patient, because, you know, we actually don't own our buildings in Thunder Bay or Sudbury. But we also want to be sure that we take the right approach to this. I care about the planet. I hope you do too, because I believe that we all have to leave a legacy for the future. As they said at the conference in Quebec City, it was a beautiful day. And when you look outside and it's a beautiful day, you wonder, what's all the fuss about? What do I need to do? What's urgent now? Well, you have to think to the future, because it might not look like it now, but we do have a climate crisis right now. So nothing gives me more pleasure than to turn over to our initial video, which is just about less than 2 minutes long, and to give you the start off, a soupçon and amuse-bouche about what it means to be in a climate crisis. Go ahead, Rebecca.
Most people think of climate change as just an environmental issue, but the World Health Organization has declared it the biggest threat to health in the 21st century. Climate change is an urgent problem that affects our health in many ways, now and in the future. Already, we've seen a rise in extreme events like heat waves, floods and bushfires. These events affect our health, threaten our food and drinking water supplies, and pollute the air we breathe. All of these issues affect our physical and mental health. But it's not all doom and gloom. There are simple things we can all do to protect ourselves and our loved ones from the impacts of climate change. And the best part is, they help us to stay healthy and save money at the same time. For example, things like walking or cycling instead of driving, eating a diet full of fruit, veggies and whole grains, reducing the amount of processed and packaged foods you eat, and choosing tap water over bottled water and sugary drinks not only help to reduce your impact on the environment, but also improve your mental and physical well-being. It's also important to look out for those who are most at risk to the immediate impacts of climate change, like the elderly, children, pregnant women, and people with chronic diseases. To adapt to our changing climate and make sure we're reducing the risks of further problems, we all need to work together, from government to industry to communities, right down to individuals. We all play a part. Climate change and health. Act today for a healthier tomorrow.
Thank you. And you know, I have to say that the Australians are actually leading in this space. It may be because the ozone layer was a bigger hole down under than it is. But, we haven't paid enough attention to the fact that in the North and in Northern Ontario, the impacts are immense. It gives me great pleasure to now invite Dr. Elaine Blacklock to speak to you all about what we're doing here at NOSM U. Thanks, Elaine. You're on mute. You might want to unmute.
Thank you, Dr. Verma. And it's a pleasure to be here today to speak with you. And I'm speaking on behalf of the ACCC, what is it called? The Action Committee, not advisory, Action Committee on Climate Change. So the International Scientific Panel, known as the IPCC, has been hard at work for over 3 decades now. It published its first report in 1990. And that was the year I finished residency training. The next report came in 1995, 1 year after I got married. The third, in 2001, came along when my son was 3. The fourth arrived in 2007, just as the world was plunging into financial crisis. The fifth, in 2014, served as the basis for the COP meetings in Paris. And with each subsequent report from the IPCC, the news became more dire, the evidence more clear, and the warnings more strident. In 2018, the IPCC warned us that 2 degrees of warming would be much more dangerous than 1.5. And just a few weeks ago, their 6th summary report came out with this verdict. In order to give ourselves not a guarantee, but a 50% chance of keeping global warming below 1.5 degrees, or if we prefer, a 2/3 chance of keeping it below 2 degrees, we need some drastic action. We need to cut emissions in half in all sectors, including healthcare, by 2030. Now, in spite of that report, last year's global greenhouse gas emissions reached yet another new world record. And 2023 emissions will likely be even higher. Though there are some optimists who think we might also be seeing early signs of a possible plateau. But nonetheless, there is so much work to do, and it is so very urgent. It is a code red emergency. This problem of climate change, it has to do with our values. It's a justice issue, it's an equity issue, and it's a fairness issue. Because affluent countries like Canada have benefited historically and ongoingly and disproportionately from the cheap energy of fossil fuels. And right here in Canada, some of us have benefited way more than others. Some of us are much more responsible for the climate crisis than others. And some of us are experiencing the impacts of climate change way more than others. Now, as Dr. Verma mentioned, NOSM University signed a declaration last week. We've also signed a travel pledge to encourage everyone associated with NOSM to really think about their travel and whether it's necessary. And these are significant steps forward. But as we all know, declarations and pledges don't always drive real action. Remember, the world's nations made pledges at Paris, but 8 years later, huge gaps remain. Gaps between what science requires, what's being pledged, and what's actually being done. NOSM University's Action Committee on Climate Change, otherwise known as the ACCC, is committed to making sure that NOSM's signature on the Planetary Health Declaration drives real change, both at the university and across Northern Ontario. To date, our planet has warmed by an average of 1.1 degrees. Canada's average temperature has already risen by 1.7 degrees, and our northern regions are warming even faster. With its roots planted firmly in Northern Ontario, NOSM University is ideally positioned to take leadership in planetary health research, in policy development, and in political advocacy. We're already working hard at enriching NOSM's undergraduate medical education curriculum with planetary health values, thinking, principles, and actions. Our graduates must be competent to practice climate-aware medicine in a climate-challenged world, to teach those who haven't had the benefit of planetary health education, and to serve as leaders and collaborators in driving our healthcare systems and our societies towards sustainability. Our trainees have the potential to greatly multiply the impact of anything we do here at NOSM. Now, in light of our university's pledge, and in keeping with the scientific evidence on climate change, we will need to drastically reduce NOSM's institutional and program-related greenhouse gas emissions over the next 5 to 7 years. So the ACCC is actively recruiting experts to help with carbon accounting and emissions reduction strategies in the near-term future. But we also recognize that NOSM's greenhouse gas emissions are really a mere drop in the national bucket. Attending to our own carbon footprint is not enough. Canada's per capita greenhouse gas emissions are amongst the highest in the world. They're twice as high as China's, 3 times as high as the UK, and more than 20 times those of African nations. And our healthcare systems alone are responsible for almost 5% of this country's emissions. The staff, faculty, and students of NOSM University have both the opportunity and the responsibility to lead and to influence the wider world. We can be not only role models, but collaborators, working across disciplines within our communities, our hospitals, and our clinics. We can advocate for and take action personally, professionally, and above all, politically. Planetary health teaches us that humans cannot be healthy or happy on a sick planet, that our own safety and well-being depend on intact ecosystems, vibrant biodiversity, a stable climate, clean air and water, and healthy soil for growing food. When we damage the planet, we harm ourselves. When healthcare systems and health professionals fail to include waste and greenhouse gases in their cost-benefit equations, they harm the populations and the patients they serve. And when universities ignore their environmental footprints, they fail their students, their communities, and society. There's a great deal of work to do, and it's urgent work. It's going to take all of us to get it done. Thank you. And now I believe we will be watching another video from the CDC on the health impacts of climate change. I was supposed to mention those ways to celebrate Earth Day. Yes, ways to celebrate Earth Day. Tomorrow is Earth Day. Eat plants. A plant-rich diet is good for the health of people and the planet. Burn calories, not fossil fuels. Use your bike or your feet. Don't fly and don't buy. And while you're at it, buy a tree from NOSM universities and plant it. And now I guess we'll move on to the video.
Widespread scientific consensus tells us the world's climate is changing. These changes are creating new health risks in communities across the United States. Extreme weather, unhealthy air quality, and disease outbreaks are becoming more frequent and more severe, affecting more people in more places. Changes to our climate mean our communities need to prepare for the health risks of higher temperatures. Extreme heat can lead to heat stroke, heat cramps, heat exhaustion, dehydration, and death. Anyone can be at risk, but some are more vulnerable, including pregnant women, people with heart or lung conditions, young children, older adults, athletes, and outdoor workers. So how do we prepare for extreme heat? Communities can establish cooling centers, plant trees to lower urban temperatures, and educate residents on ways to protect themselves and others, such as drinking plenty of water and checking on older relatives and neighbors. 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 Checking A changing climate also means more frequent and more severe storms and flooding. That puts people at immediate risk of being injured or killed by debris, downed power lines, or floodwaters. After a severe storm or flooding event, possible health risks are contaminated food or drinking water, bacteria, viruses, and toxic chemicals in floodwaters, mold, and difficulty accessing healthcare services like emergency help, prescribed medications, and supplemental oxygen. In these events, older residents, people with disabilities, and lower-income households are more at risk. They may all have a harder time fleeing from a storm and may face more health risks if they can't evacuate. One thing we often miss: the mental toll. First responders who witness countless tragedies and residents who are forced to flee are more vulnerable to anxiety and depression, even those who have no history of mental illness. To prepare, communities can find out which neighborhoods, people, and resources are most at risk, upgrade infrastructure such as roads and sanitary sewer systems, and educate residents on how to stay safe during and after an extreme weather event, such as avoiding driving in flooded areas. As average temperatures rise across the globe, air quality can also change. That looks like longer and stronger pollen seasons, which can trigger asthma attacks and allergies, hotter temperatures and changing weather patterns, which can make air pollution worse by increasing the density of dangerous particles, and more frequent droughts that can lead to wildfires, which release dangerous pollutants into the air. Young children, people with asthma and respiratory conditions, older adults, and people with compromised immune systems are more at risk of being harmed. Work that can help communities prepare includes collaborating with community partners to set up health-focused air quality alert systems and educating residents on how to check alerts to know when it's safe to exercise outside. Now, let's talk about these little guys, pests. Change to our climate can also mean more risk of diseases spread by pests like ticks, mosquitoes, fleas, and rodents. With higher average temperatures, diseases transmitted by pests can multiply faster, spread to more locations, and infect people over longer periods of time each year. Lyme disease, West Nile virus, Zika, and hantavirus are examples of the resulting health risks. People who spend extended time outdoors in areas where pest-borne diseases are common are most at risk. Communities can prepare by creating systems to track and assess population health effects and working with local partners on outreach strategies to help residents protect themselves, such as staying out of certain areas and using insect repellent. The Centers for Disease Control and Prevention is empowering health departments across the United States to prevent and adapt to the local health risks of a changing climate through the Climate Ready States and Cities Initiative. CDC's Building Resilience Against Climate Effects, or BRACE framework, helps health departments plan a coordinated community response. Using BRACE, communities are 1. Identifying the range of climate impacts and the people, locations, and resources most at risk. 2. Quantifying the health problems associated with a changing climate. 3. Assessing science-based interventions to address those health problems. 4. Developing and overseeing community adaptation plans. And 5. Evaluating the process to learn more about what works. For more information, visit cdc.gov/climate and health.
Great video, and I always learn something every time. I'm delighted now to hand this over to Sam Hunter, who I described early on. Sam, Ani Boujou, welcome, and Miigwech for actually giving this talk. So over to you.
Thank you very much. Hoping that my audio is working. I had some technical problems earlier, and can everybody hear me?
Sounds great. Thanks, Sam.
That's good. And the pictures that I'm showing on the screen is not what I will be talking about. This presentation came quite quick, and I just want to talk about where I'm from. I'm from Northern Ontario. We're on the south shore of Hudson Bay, Northern Ontario, and I've been working on climate change 2008, and made a lot of strides with the work up here. And I just want to talk about what I have seen with my travels all over North America. I worked all over the Midwestern United States, went all over West, and all the way to Nova Scotia. And but that's not. I don't want to talk about everything that that I've seen. I just want to talk about the indigenous communities and what I have seen, and a lot of the things that I've seen with climate change and indigenous communities is that a lot of them are unfortunate. They're at a disadvantage, and I guess the term that I'm going to use is they are poor. And what I have seen with a lot of these people with the lack of resources that they have, it brings a lot of hardships. They have a roof over their heads and heat, and not so much food on a table. They do have some basic stuff like clothes, bikes, cars, and but we need more than that. So with my non-indigenous friends, they have a lot of stuff, especially when they're kids. When they reach 16, they have like cars and motorcycles, and they have a lot of. They have way more stuff because I have a lot of friends on that side too. And the other thing that I noticed is that it's convenient that we have nurses and doctors in our communities, but I think that medicine is not all about pills and injections and the prescriptions that these people receive. I think um, that's I see a lot of medication being given to these people. Just about everybody has pills, and everybody has seems like everybody has diabetes or some kind of ailment. And I think that when our communities, our people depend on the environment, we need more education, and I think that with the lack of proper education, we need more ethics for the people that live there, because when we don't have enough capacity building in the communities, um, training, what happens is that these people get sick one way or another. It can come from poor housing, mold, the food they eat. And there's also overcrowding. One of the things that I noticed with overcrowding is that the more people we have, there's more cooking, there's more steam coming up from the cooking, showers, and there's a lot of mold. And there's sanitation problems, and we don't even know how much our body respirates, but it does a lot when there's overcrowding. And we need to offset that because we get airborne viruses. And also, I noticed that a lot of the reserve that I've been to, there's a lot of over harvesting of timber from companies. And because of climate change, you get airborne diseases that causes lung disease. It's been happening to a community here near Constant Lake. And I believe that is through over harvesting. We gotta take care of the planet. The next slide, please. And one of the things that brings to big families that are poor when they have lack of resources, they eat a lot of cereal. They drink a lot of milk, and milk it causes a lot of problems for Native people because we don't have we're tolerant to milk, intolerant to milk, and it brings a lot of gases to our bodies, and cereals brings a lot of deteriorating to our gums, our teeth, and we get diabetes. They eat a lot of canned food, Katie, and there's a lot of inequality to our food because we don't have the money to buy good food or even to grow crops. We can't afford greenhouses up here. It's just too expensive. We just have enough to make ends meet with cheap food, because a package of cornflakes will last a week, and it's only like $4 or $10 or something like that. And if you were born to a family of 5 to 10, chances are you're going to get diabetes, because you eat all these foods, pancakes, syrup, and stuff like that. And if you do the math, I think that growing up in a rest and looking at these families, and if you cannot contain your family, it's very hard to look after the community. That's what you see in a reserve, and it's very hard to contain the environment too. And climate change, we need to do our share, and we need to offset these problems that are in the reserve. I know a lot of times that we say natives are look after the land, take care of the land, but when you look at their campsites, sometimes they're an eyesore. But I know things are coming around, and it is getting better. But I think that we need to help more communities get better with their economic conditions. And I noticed that since our communities start turning into the wilderness for their food, their health has gotten better. The environment of the diabetes has gotten, it's disappearing. It's an environment that can be defeated. And I think that once we start understanding these things, I think it'll bring more food to the table. What I mean by food to the table is bringing more help to the environment, helping the environmentalists, because I think we are really the backbone for the environmental movement. I've been to the United Nations to talk about climate change, and they're trying to protect 25%. But what does that mean? 25% of an area? 25% of the whole area? I don't even understand what 25% means. Like, if you destroy 75% of your body, what good is keeping 25%? And that is what's happening to the economic conditions in the reserve, and I think that can be used as a metaphor to the environment, to climate change. Next slide, please. And I think that bridging cultures is very important. In our community, we study the water, the benthics fish, and what you see on the screen here. And our community is still very healthy because we are so isolated and remote. And I just want to talk about that climate change is real, because there's a lot of naysayers up here. Next slide, please. I've met a lot of people, and they say climate change is not happening. But where I come from, we have lands that are collapsing. Next slide. And erosion and trees sinking all over the place. Next slide, please. And seeing all these things happening, what you see on the screen on the green area is frozen permafrost. At one time, it used to be like that, the whole area, and all that brownish stuff is melting permafrost. This place is turning to be like the Florida Everglades. It's all swampland. It's very hard to move around. Next slide, please. And I think that we need to study and we need to adapt, because what does not adapt dies. And I've seen it up here. We used to have millions and millions of snow geese. Now we just have the stragglers. We do have some, but they're moving north, and there's so many species of birds that are disappearing. They're just moving up north, and the things that we need is technology labs. Because I've been to southern Ontario, where they grow food, and in laboratories, they're predicting the weather 100 years from now, and they're growing crops in that environment under in a laboratory, and we need that too because we don't know what's going to happen in the foreseeable future. We also need houses to adapt to climate change, and one of the things that I found out with my studies is that most of the buildings in all over North America, they're only like no more than 65% efficient. We're wasting a lot of energy, and we can have houses that can use 15% energy and still do the same thing. We can save a lot of resources, but we're just not doing it. We need to reduce our carbon footprint, and I think that we can do it. We need more education, especially in communities. I've been invited to speak in cities in southern Ontario. I've spoken all over the states, and I think that we need to do more. There's a lot of people out there, the Al Gores, the David Suzuki's, and I think that when you look at the houses that they live in, they don't really walk the talk. So we need more people. We need to reach the grassroots so that they can become evangelists in their own right. And I think that we need to find a way how to do that. And it's really important because I like to study Apple computer and how they got off the ground. They started from a little garage and they went to study preachers and how they reached the masses. And Apple's the biggest company now. They managed to use evangelism and to do that. And we have to find some kind of blueprint so we can reduce our carbon footprint. And we need to understand too that everybody is into green energy, gasless vehicles that run on batteries. But we had vehicles that can run 4 liters for every 100 kilometers. Audi does it. Why do we need trucks that will run 20 kilometers to 20 liters to 100? We have that technology, but we just don't seem to bring that information to the masses. And I think that it's really important that we do that. If you go to a reserve, or if you go to Louisiana, and the poor people, they have the most expensive cars. A friend of mine barely makes money. He has a $90,000 truck. How can he afford it? You can buy a plane with $90,000. And I think that this is what's causing climate change. We don't bring good technology to poor people. Look at India and China. They have about maybe almost 10,000 coal burning energy to bring electricity. Why can't we help them? And a lot of the stuff, the flux stations that you see on the screen, we get coal burning energy places, and it's falling here in our country halfway around the world. And we found out that that pollution goes around the world in the atmosphere 2.25 times. It circles the world 2.25 times. And I think that we need to help these people. Next slide, please. And at one time we even found, I don't know what you call it, it's like ice rain, but it's snow in our snow up here. And that's what we do. We study contaminants, and we even have contaminants from the oil sands. Next slide, please. And we need to have we need to teach more science. We need to integrate traditional ecological knowledge with science, because we're starting to find out that we seem to understand why flooding happens. We understand why we're getting these temperatures. It's not because of what's happening here, it's what's happening somewhere around the world. And food security is important. We need to grow our own food. But we live in a place where we used to be under the ocean not too long ago, last ice age, so our soil is acidic. So we need help with science. We're starting to understand it, doing our own research. And most of all, we need to be healthy. and we have to do something about climate change. Next slide, please. And I think that one of the things that I seen with climate change is that what used to take place, that used to transpire over 100 of years, it's happening in decades. I'm now 56 years old, and the changes that happened since I was born. To give you an example, we used to have snow drifts that would go to the roof of the house. I haven't seen that. It's all gone. We used to have frozen rivers and lakes first week of November. Now it doesn't happen. Everything freezes in December. It's 1 month later. And the spring melt happens a few weeks earlier. Everything is different. And all the permafrost that used to be here, I would say 60% of it is gone. It's collapsing. There's sinkholes. The biggest sinkhole that I've seen is 60 feet deep and maybe 600 feet across. It's massive, and there's not one of them, there's all over. And I think that everything that we talk about here, we need to find a way and put this into a curriculum, because everybody is saying that, yeah, this happened before. Yes, it did. Natural cycle with the ice ages, but what's happening now is different, totally different. We are living in the sixth mass extinction, but this time it's created by us humans. And when the permafrost melts, it gets worse, because where I live, there's so much methane. I've seen it bubble. You can put a match on it, and the methane that is released to the atmosphere, it's causing more damage, and it is way more damage than the smokestacks that you see from industry. I don't really have much more to say, but I'll go through the slides. Can you go to the next slide, please? These are the people that I work with the climate change. We work with Lawrence University and other universities too. University of Manitoba, University of Toronto, Laval. We work with the Ministry of Natural Resources, Forestry, Ministry of Environment, and Canadian Wildlife Society. We work with other communities and tribal councils, and we've expanded our work here in Pewanak, and we're now working with a few more universities, more scientists, and but I think my goal is to reach curriculum to students and classes, and try to reach people all across Canada so they can understand how to reduce their carbon footprint. Next slide, please. And when I was starting out with work, I had a hard time. It seems like I was not getting anywhere, but I think with the people that are starting to come together, I'm pretty sure we're still, we're like an iceberg. We're like 5% out of the water, and 5% of us still under water, and we need to come out and spread the word more. Next slide, please. And yes, the work that we are doing, it must go on in whatever shape it is, but we have to keep thinking about the young ones. Like my little grandson here, we have to prepare for their generation, because whatever we do, they'll pay for it. If we do something wrong, like our deficit, they'll pay for it. And we should not do that. The deficit that we are creating with climate change, we have to pay for it now so they can have a good life. And one of the things I don't agree with Canada is that we don't really have technology. Every time we want to make money, we dig a hole in the ground, and that's not right. Why can't we be like Switzerland? They have no resources, yet they still have a good economy, and we have so much resources here that'll last a long time. We just got to do it right. We just can't leave big holes in the ground. Thank you very much. It's Sam Hunter.
Sam, this was so awesome. And I know Elaine probably has a few things to say, but I love that saying, vanity kills wisdom. After all, it first destroyed common sense. And I do love also the adage, it is Murphy's Law at work. You know, I put in the chat some of the great quotes that, always make me think about these issues. And, there are so many important things, but they're all calling for a sense of urgency. And I'll turn over to Elaine, and especially the question for you and for Elaine is, how do we get people out of their sense of complacency, Elaine? I mean, everybody talks about it and then they just stop and they go on and they carry on with their day. How do we continue to build a sense of urgency because it's impacting us right now?
I I wish I actually knew the answer to that, Sarita. I come from, I have to confess, and this is why I often look back at the history of my own life and consider it in light of the years that we've known about climate change and how many decades of my life went by when I was actually very complacent. And even now, I know that although I have great anxiety about climate change and I work hard on various endeavors to try to do my part, I know that in many ways I continue to live on a day-to-day basis as if it wasn't happening. And I don't, make the kinds of changes in my personal life that really the situation requires. I think the reality is that we need to be getting together with other people in joining organizations and working together in groups, because when we do that, we inspire each other, we encourage each other, and we can keep each other going when, it's easy enough to get down about problems that seem almost insurmountable. And I think in some ways, the complacency that people exhibit is a manifestation of feelings of helplessness and hopelessness. And so when we get together with other people and work on projects and see that we can actually make progress on something, then I think that helps to build our sense of self-efficacy and our vision for doing even more.
Great words. Sam Miigwech, very much, so much for your wonderful words of wisdom and sharing with your story. For you, the real issue is you're trying to make so much change in a part of the world where it's hard to even reach people. What is the most interesting thing that you've seen in a community or with people where they've actually been able to do something really, really good? Like, is there some example that you think would inspire NOSM University to know that people were able to make a change? Is there a story that you can tell us?
Yes, one of the things that I did with the scientists and government people, I invited them to our community and we got together and we took our elders and families, even small children, to a campsite out by the coast of Hudson Bay at the estuary of the Winds River. And our people have seen scientists from the 50s, 60s doing research out there, but they never knew what they did. All they did was fly around in choppers and airplanes, and our people were always complaining about choppers flying around, scaring away all the animals and the geese, especially in the caribou, and people would get annoyed. So I invited them to a same camp, and we had a really good time. And they did their experiments to the community members. They did research on the water. They studied fish. They took samples from the ground, and they did their analysis in the camp. And our people were like, "Wow! Now we understand why you guys are flying around. Now we understand what work you are doing." And it gave so much respect. And then after a few days, our people went fishing. They went hunting. And most of the hunting that they did, the harvesting that they did, was in the water. And then one of the researchers said, wow, I never understood why water is so important to you people. And that really struck a note to both camps. And the understanding of trying to protect the land through research and our way of life, the scientists finally understood that their goal, why they study research, is to mitigate, to reduce harm from the goal for their research is to reduce harm to the environment. But when they saw what we do with the land, we're actually using it to protect it 100%. So we had that understanding, and we're trying to change mitigation, because mitigation to the government means it gives the right for industry to do what they want. But mitigation for us is to protect the fish, the water, so we don't have mercury. So we're trying to come together. And one of the people that were there didn't believe in climate change. And so when they saw the sinking trees, when the permafrost melts, they start sinking and they choke and they die. And there's fields of them as far as you can see in some places. And from what they saw, they became believers of climate change. And we need to get that message across. Thank you.
I also love your t-shirt, so I hope they're the Stanley Cup champions this year too. Although, you know, up here, many of us believe in other teams, so we'll be in a bit of a interesting battle on that one. I see there's a great comment from Rob Bertrand in the chat about eliminating one-time use plastics from his life. Thank you, Rob. Any other thoughts, Elaine, as we go forward? Do you want to make up some wrap-up comments?
Well, I want to say that we would love to have more people on the ACCC. I would welcome people from, academic endeavors, research endeavors, and of course, clinical endeavors. We would love to have more people who are practicing clinical medicine or any other health profession for that matter, working on our committee. And so if you are interested in joining, feel free to send me an email at eblacklock@nosm.ca, or send Sarita an email, or Rebecca, and we'll make sure you get linked up. Because there's plenty of work to do, as I did say in my little speech, and we need many hands to help get it done.
Thank you. I put yours and Rebecca's emails in the chat, and of course, people can always contact me. But you know, I really appreciate you and your leadership, Elaine, and helping us harness our energies and our strengths towards making a difference in society. I thank Sam Hunter, Miigwech Sam, for your good thoughts and wisdom and wonderful contributions. And I thank everybody today for joining us and taking at least an hour out of your time. Please reuse, recycle. Please bike to work. Actually, I think Elaine is working on trying to get us a person or a place for keeping our bikes. I think she's working on that, certainly on the Sudbury campus, and I hope we can get that on both our campuses. And I think we really agree that we want to be an organization that makes a difference and leads the way. And we have many people on our committee who are doing that. People are working with anesthetic gases, with the hospitals, with education, our curriculum. And so that would be awesome. I see Gary and Elaine encouraging us to make a statement about fossil fuel and the morality of the use of fossil fuel and addressing banks. So we will have to get the advice of the ACC on who to address that to and how to do that. And we're in for making sure that we do all the right things. Miigwech, merci beaucoup. Thank you, everybody, for taking an hour out of your day. And this has been a fantastic session. If you have ideas on what to do next year, speakers you'd like to hear from. We've had 3 events like this. They've been really great. Last year we had Joe Vipon and Courtney Howard and Dr. Blacklock and some really fantastic speakers. Thank you, everybody. Have a really good weekend. Thank you, Elaine. Thank you, Sam. Thank you, Rebecca. And of course, our IT team for supporting us so beautifully. Thank you so much. Happy Earth Day tomorrow, everybody. Lots to do to be connected to the environment. Bye.